It was just after 1 in the morning when I heard it. A pounding, frantic knock on my door. At first I thought I was dreaming, the kind of dream where your heart races before your brain catches up. But then I heard it again, louder, sharper, urgent. I pulled on my robe and rushed to the door, my chest tight with fear. And there she was, my daughter. My beautiful girl. She collapsed into my arms before I could even ask what was wrong. Her face was swollen, her lips split, her eyes glassy with tears. She whispered just 4 words before she fainted against me. "He hit me, Mom." My blood turned to ice. Her husband, the man who was supposed to protect her, the man I welcomed into our family, he had done this. And as I cradled her on the floor, the phone on the counter lit up with his name. He was calling. Again and again. But the only sound I could hear was my own heart pounding in my ears as I realized my daughter's nightmare had just become my own. I stared at the phone glowing on the counter, his name right there on the screen. My son-in-law, the man I once trusted with my daughter's happiness, the man who stood in my kitchen last Thanksgiving, carving the turkey, laughing with the kids, telling jokes. And now he was the reason my daughter lay unconscious in my arms. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My hands shook too hard to even hold the phone. I wanted to scream into it to tell him he was a monster, but my daughter's shallow breathing kept me frozen. Protecting her came first. As the call buzzed and died, my mind reeled back through the years. Hadn't I noticed little signs? Times he raised his voice too sharply. The way he controlled the money, always reminding her that he paid the bills. The time I saw her flinch when he touched her shoulder, and she brushed it off with a nervous laugh. I ignored it. I wanted to believe she was happy. And now here she was, broken in my arms, proof that my silence had cost us both. The phone buzzed again. Another call. Then another. Back to back like he was desperate. I turned the screen face down, my pulse hammering in my ears. Was he worried she ran? Or was he making sure he still had control? Suddenly, my daughter stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, glassy and wet. "Don't answer," she whispered, her voice so faint I had to lean close to hear. "Don't let him find me." My heart clenched. This wasn't just a fight gone too far. This was terror. My daughter was afraid of her own husband. I promised her then and there, in the dark of that kitchen, that I wouldn't let him touch her again. But as I held her trembling hand, one question gnawed at me. How far would he go to keep his secrets hidden? The next morning, I finally answered one of his calls. I had to hear his voice, had to know what game he was playing. "Elizabeth," he said, smooth as silk. "Is she there? She ran off last night. She's confused. We had a little argument, but I love her. Can you put her on?" I almost laughed. The audacity. A little argument? Her face was still bruised, her ribs sore when she tried to sit up. "She's not talking to you," I snapped. There was a pause. Then the mask slipped. His voice dropped. Colder. Sharper. "She's my wife. She belongs with me. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." My stomach turned. Belongs with him? Like property? I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles ached. I hung up. My daughter sat across from me at the kitchen table, silent tears running down her cheeks. And then she whispered words that broke me. "Mom, this wasn't the first time." My breath caught. The room seemed to tilt. She told me everything. How the yelling had started, then the pushing, then the slaps. How she covered the bruises with makeup, made excuses to her friends. How she thought if she just tried harder, loved him more, it would stop. But it hadn't stopped. It had gotten worse. And now, it had brought her here, back to my doorstep, bruised and broken. My heart ached with guilt. How had I missed it? How had I let her walk into this? As the days passed, the truth poured out like poison. She showed me the texts, late-night messages from a woman I didn't know. He told you were nothing, that you'd never leave. Another one, I'm the future. You're the past. My daughter sobbed as she scrolled, each message a knife to her heart. She suspected, of course. The sudden work trips, the way he'd come home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. But seeing it in writing, the mistress mocking her, was almost too much to bear. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march to that woman's door and show her what kind of man she was protecting. But instead, I held my daughter and told her she wasn't crazy. She wasn't worthless. He was the liar. He was the fraud. And then one night, as we sat in that dim kitchen, another text buzzed through. This one wasn't from him. It was from her, the mistress. You think you've won? He's outside. My blood ran cold. I pulled back the curtain just a sliver, and there they were. Headlights idling at the end of my driveway. His car. His shadow stretching across our lives once again. When the police finally came that night, he was already gone. But the damage he left behind spread like wildfire. The next morning, my phone lit up with messages from family. My sister scolded me for involving the cops. My cousin said my daughter was being dramatic. His parents insisted he was a good man, that maybe she had pushed him too far. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Good man? A good man doesn't leave his wife bruised. A good man doesn't cheat and then taunt her with the mistress's messages. But in their eyes, he was the polished son-in-law, and my daughter was the problem. My daughter sat there, listening to me read the messages, her face pale with shame. She whispered, "Maybe they're right. Maybe it's me." That broke me. I grabbed her shoulders and said, "No, don't you dare believe that. This is not your fault. Not one bruise, not one lie, not one betrayal was ever your fault." But as the night fell again, headlights returned to the end of the driveway. This time, they didn't leave. And then the pounding started. On the door. The pounding slowed, turned into a steady knock. Then a voice, his voice. "Sweetheart, open up. It's me. Let's just talk." My daughter froze, her hands clutching mine so tight I thought my bones would snap. "Don't believe him," she whispered. His voice turned sweeter, softer. "I love you. You know that, right? I made a mistake. But we can fix this. Don't let your mother turn you against me." I wanted to scream. He was standing on my porch, trying to twist her mind, as even the bruises still bloomed on her skin. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another message from that woman, the mistress. "Be smart. Let him in. He loves you." My daughter shook her head violently, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He'll never stop, Mom. He'll never stop until he owns me again." And in that moment, I knew she was right. This wasn't just a marriage gone bad. This was a war. The night stretched long, filled with his pounding fists and mocking words through the door. He alternated between begging and threatening. One moment he promised he'd change. The next, he growled that she'd regret humiliating him. I called the police again, my voice shaking as I begged them to hurry. When the patrol car finally pulled into the driveway, relief washed over me until I saw him smile. He stepped back, straightened his suit, smoothed his hair, and greeted the officers like old friends. "Gentlemen," he said warmly, "this is just a misunderstanding. My wife is emotional. You know how it is." My blood boiled, but the officers looked unsure, glancing between him and me. He had always been the charmer, the man who could talk his way out of anything. I thought for a moment he'd succeed again. But then my daughter stepped forward. Her voice trembled, but her words cut like a knife. "He hit me, he cheated on me, he terrorized me, and I want him gone." The officers turned to him. His smile faltered. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. They cuffed him right there on my porch. As they led him away, one officer asked my daughter, "Do you want to press charges?" She looked at me, her eyes wide, her whole life hanging in that one decision. And then, with a strength I'd never seen before, she nodded, "Yes." The night he was taken away, the house fell silent, too silent. My daughter curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her face still streaked with tears. I stroked her hair the way I did when she was a little girl with nightmares, whispering, "It's over. You're safe now." But deep down, I knew better. A man like him doesn't just disappear because a squad car drives away. His shadow lingered in the house like smoke after a fire. And in the morning, we'd have to face the fallout. The fallout came fast. The phone lit up with messages, my sisters, my cousins, even my pastor. Some said they were praying for us. Others scolded me. "Marriage is hard. You shouldn't bring the law into it. Maybe she overreacted. He's always been a good man." Good man. Those words tasted bitter. Good men don't leave bruises. Good men don't have mistresses who taunt wives with text messages. Good men don't pound on doors and scream threats in the middle of the night. But in their eyes, he was the polished son-in-law, and my daughter was the problem. We went to court weeks later, nerves stretched thin. My daughter stood in front of the judge, voice trembling but clear, recounting every bruise, every insult, every betrayal. Her husband sat just feet away, still in his pressed suit, still trying to wear the mask of charm. But this time, the cracks showed. The mistress, the messages, the violence, they had stripped away his armor. I'll never forget the look on his face when the judge's gavel came down. Guilty. Restraining order granted. His rights suspended. He wouldn't be stepping foot near my daughter again. For once, justice had a sound. And it echoed like freedom. But justice didn't erase the scars. The weeks that followed were a blur of therapy sessions, police reports, and whispered apologies from relatives who had doubted her. My daughter was rebuilding herself piece by fragile piece, and I was right there beside her. Some nights she woke up screaming. Other nights she sat staring at the wall, wondering how she could have loved a man who hated her so much. And I told her every single time, love isn't weakness. Trust isn't weakness. What he did was the weakness. What you did, the courage to speak, to press charges, that's strength. Months later, we sat together on the porch as dawn broke. The sky bled pink and gold over the horizon, the kind of morning my mother used to call God's paintbrush. My daughter sipped her coffee, her hands steadier now, her eyes softer than I had seen them in years. She looked at me and whispered, "I thought I'd never get out. I thought he owned me. But you saved me, Mom." Tears welled in my eyes. I shook my head. "No, sweetheart, you saved yourself. You stood up. You broke free. I just held the door closed until you were ready to walk through it." The cicadas hummed. The world was waking up, and for the first time in a long time, so were we. Yes, the scars were there, inside and out. Yes, there were still whispers in the family, still people who looked at us with judgment. But sitting there, bathed in the glow of the rising sun, I knew something they didn't. We had survived. We had taken back our lives, and no matter what, he could never steal that from us again. So let me ask you, if your child showed up at your door at 1 a.m. bruised and broken, begging for help, what would you do?